The day I discovered my daughter had changed the locks on my own home. I also found the falsified medical records declaring me mentally incompetent. They were sitting in plain view on my kitchen counter, a draft of a legal document transferring power of attorney to her, along with an obituary she'd already written for me. I was 68 years old and apparently, my daughter couldn't wait for me to die naturally. If this story shocks you, please like, follow, and share this video with someone who needs to hear that sometimes the greatest betrayals come from those closest to us. Trust me, you'll want to see how this ends. My name is Eleanor Richmond. For 35 years, I built a successful real estate business from nothing, raised my daughter Victoria as a single mother, and managed to amass what most would consider a comfortable fortune for rental properties, a vacation home in Florida, and investments worth over $10 million. Not bad for a woman who started with nothing but determination after my husband abandoned us. When Victoria was just 3 years old, I was proud of what I'd accomplished, and more importantly, proud of the daughter I'd raised. Victoria graduated from an excellent university, built a respectable career in finance, married a charming man named Robert, and gave me two beautiful grandchildren. I thought I had succeeded as a mother, giving her everything I never had: security, opportunity, unconditional love. How painfully ironic that the very security I worked so hard to provide would become the target of her greed. The first signs of trouble began subtly. Around my 65th birthday, Victoria started making comments about my memory, small things at first. "Mom, you've told that story 3 times this week," she would say with gentle concern. Even when I was certain I hadn't. "You forgot we had plans for dinner," she'd remind me, showing me text messages I had no recollection of sending. "Grandma's getting forgetful," I overheard her telling my 12-year-old grandson, Mason. "It happens when people get older." I brushed it off initially. Perhaps I was becoming a bit forgetful. It wouldn't be unusual at my age, but something felt wrong about the frequency with which these memory lapses were being pointed out, especially since I'd always prided myself on my sharp mind. Then came the suggestions that I should simplify my life by selling my rental properties that had provided steady income for decades. "It's just too much for you to manage, Mom," Victoria insisted over Sunday dinner at my house. "You should be enjoying your retirement, not dealing with tenants and repairs." "I have a property manager for that," I reminded her. "Has been handling everything for years." "But the stress isn't good for you," Robert, my son-in-law, chimed in. "Besides, the market is hot right now. You could make a killing." When I firmly declined, the conversation shifted to my investment portfolio. "Mom, these stocks are too aggressive for someone your age," Victoria said, somehow having obtained copies of my financial statements. "Let me help you reorganize your investments. I do this for a living, remember?" Again, I declined. Something in my gut told me to keep my financial independence intact. That's when the incidents began. The gas stove left on that I was certain I'd turned off. The front door found unlocked in the morning. The missed appointments I had no record of making. "I'm worried about you," Victoria said, her voice dripping with concern after I supposedly missed a lunch date with her. These memory issues seemed to be getting worse. Each incident was followed by increasingly urgent suggestions that I should consider moving to an assisted living facility, just for your safety, Mom, or signing over control of my finances to Victoria, so you don't have to worry about these things anymore. I might be older, but I'm not a fool. After a lifetime in business, I've developed a keen sense for when I'm being manipulated. Still, I never imagined my own daughter would go to such lengths to gain control of my assets. The turning point came when I fell in my home, a genuine accident. I missed a step coming down the stairs while carrying a laundry basket. The bruises were real, but minor. Victoria, however, treated it like a catastrophic event. Within days, she had arranged for a home health aide to visit daily, someone I neither needed nor wanted. She'd also scheduled appointments with a neurologist and a geriatric specialist. "This isn't optional, Mom," she said firmly when I objected. "We need to know what's going on with you." To appease her, I agreed to the doctor visits. The neurologist found nothing concerning, but suggested follow-up tests just to be thorough. The geriatric specialist, Dr. Lambert, asked Victoria to join us during my consultation. "Mrs. Richmond shows no significant cognitive impairment," Dr. Lambert concluded after a series of memory and cognitive function tests. I saw the flash of disappointment on Victoria's face before she recovered her concerned expression. "But doctor, at home she's constantly forgetting things, leaving the stove on, missing appointments. She fell last week." Dr. Lambert looked at me, then back at Victoria. "A single fall doesn't indicate dementia, Ms. Richmond, and from what I can see, your mother is perfectly capable of managing her own affairs." I felt vindicated. But that victory was short-lived. 2 weeks later, I returned from a weekend visiting my sister to find that the locks on my house had been changed. Standing on my own porch, bags in hand, I couldn't get into my home of 30 years. I called Victoria, who arrived 20 minutes later with Robert and a man she introduced as Dr. Peterson. "Mom, I'm sorry I came to this," she said, not sounding sorry at all. "But after what happened last week, we had no choice." "Last week?" I asked, genuinely confused. "I was at Margaret's all week." Victoria exchanged a meaningful look with Dr. Peterson. "See? She doesn't even remember the episode." The police found her wandering downtown in her nightgown at 3 a.m., completely disoriented. This was an outright lie. I'd spoken to my sister every day during my visit. There had been no episode, no police. But before I could protest, Dr. Peterson stepped forward. "Mrs. Richmond, I'm a geriatric psychiatrist. Your daughter consulted me about your condition, and based on the documented incidents, I've recommended temporary conservatorship until we can properly assess your capacity." My blood ran cold. "What documented incidents, Mom? Please don't make this harder," Victoria said, producing a key and finally opening my front door. "We're just trying to help you." I stepped into my own house feeling like an intruder. That's when I saw the papers on the kitchen counter, medical evaluations I'd never undergone, a power of attorney document awaiting signatures, and most chillingly, a draft obituary that Victoria had prepared for me. The obituary was dated for just 3 months in the future. In that moment, looking at my daughter's face as child I had sacrificed everything for, I realized I was fighting for my life, not against disease or age, but against my own flesh and blood, who saw me not as her mother, but as an obstacle between her and my state. What Victoria didn't know was that I had been suspicious enough to take precautions that would soon prove to be my salvation in a battle I never imagined. I'd have to fight against my own daughter. If you're as disturbed by this betrayal as I was, like this video now and follow for the next part where I reveal exactly what Victoria didn't know about me, and the trap I had secretly laid long before she made her move. Because sometimes the people who think you're vulnerable severely underestimate what a lifetime of independence teaches you about self-preservation. That night, locked in my own home with Victoria and Robert sleeping in the guest bedroom to keep an eye on me, I sat in the darkness of my study and remembered the exact moment I first suspected my daughter's intentions. It was 6 months earlier at Mason's birthday party. Victoria had excused herself to take a phone call, leaving her phone on the patio table. A notification lit up her screen, a message from Robert that I glimpsed accidentally. "Did you talk to your mother about changing the will yet?" That single message had triggered a lifetime of business instincts. The next day, I contacted my longtime attorney, Howard Goldstein. "Eleanor, in 40 years of practice, I've seen this pattern too many times," Howard said grimly after I shared my concerns. "Adult children get impatient waiting for their inheritance, especially when there's significant wealth involved. Victoria has a successful career." I protested weakly. "She's never wanted for anything." Howard's expression was sympathetic but firm. "It's rarely about need, it's about greed. And sometimes, a sense of entitlement, feeling they deserve it now rather than later." That conversation led to a strategic plan that now, trapped in my own home, was my only hope. First, I needed to document Victoria's behavior. The morning after the lock-changing incident, I played the role of the confused, compliant mother. "I'm sorry for being difficult," I told Victoria at breakfast, my voice deliberately frail. "Maybe you're right about my memory." The relief on her face was immediate. "It's okay, Mom. We're going to get you the help you need." What she didn't know was that the hearing aid I wore, which I genuinely needed for mild hearing loss, contained a recording device I purchased online. Every conversation was now being documented. "The attorney will be here this afternoon," Robert mentioned casually, buttering his toast. "Just routine paperwork to make sure Victoria can handle your finances while you focus on getting better." I nodded meekly while my mind raced. They were moving faster than I'd anticipated. "Could I have my phone?" I asked. "I'd like to call Margaret to let her know I'm home safe." "I'll call her for you," Victoria said quickly. "Dr. Peterson suggested limiting your stress. Too much stimulation isn't good for your condition." "What exactly is my condition?" I asked innocently. "No one has really explained." Victoria and Robert exchanged glances. "Early onset dementia with paranoid features," Victoria stated with practiced precision. "That's why you thought I was trying to take your money, remember those paranoid episodes?" I never said anything about her taking my money. This fabricated symptom confirmed everything. "Oh," I said, feigning confusion. "I don't remember that exactly," Victoria said, patting my hand condescendingly. "That's why we're here to help." Over the next 2 days, I was effectively a prisoner in my own home. My phone disappeared. My computer was being updated. The house phone would only connect to pre-approved numbers. The doors were kept locked. with keys hidden. Victoria and Robert took shifts, never leaving me alone for more than a bathroom break. Their oversight had one critical flaw. They underestimated exactly how much planning I'd already done. 3 weeks earlier, after finding Victoria searching through my home office when she thought I was gardening, I had taken decisive action. I withdrew $10,000 in cash from a separate account Victoria knew nothing about. I purchased a prepaid cell phone, hiding it inside a hollowed-out Bible on my bedside table, the last place my atheist daughter would ever look, and most importantly, I created a new will with very specific provisions. On the third day of my captivity, the attorney Victoria had arranged arrived. Not Howard Goldstein, of course, but a young man named Jeffrey Parker who barely made eye contact with me. Mrs. Richmond, these documents will grant temporary financial power of attorney to your daughter, he explained, sliding papers across my dining room table. Just until your health stabilizes. I noticed he never asked if I understood, or if I was signing voluntarily. Could I read them? First, I asked. Mom, they're standard documents, Victoria interjected. Mr. Parker is very busy, and has other appointments. I took the papers anyway, making a show of reading slowly. I'm just trying to understand what I'm signing. Victoria sighed dramatically. This is exactly what Dr. Peterson was concerned about. The paranoia makes it difficult for her to trust even basic legal documents. Mr. Parker looked uncomfortable but said nothing. Just one question, I said, my voice deliberately shaky. If I sign this, who controls my property? The rental houses and the Florida condo. Victoria would manage those assets in your best interest, Parker replied. And could she sell them? I pressed. Victoria interrupted before he could answer. Only if necessary for your care, Mom. But it won't come to that. The lie hung in the air between us. I knew Victoria had already contacted real estate agents. I'd received a misdirected email 2 weeks ago about listing my Florida property. I think I need more time, I said. Setting down the pen, Victoria's smile tightened. Mom, we discussed this. Your condition will only get worse. It's important to handle these matters while you're having a lucid day. The implied threat was clear. Sign now or be declared incompetent. I needed more time. My plan required 3 more days. Could I have some water? My medication makes my mouth dry, I said, playing for time. When Robert left to get water, I slipped my hand into my cardigan pocket, feeling for the panic button I'd hidden there, a medical alert device that would connect to a 24/7 operator. Another precaution I'd taken weeks ago. But before I could press it, Victoria leaned close, her voice low and threatening. Stop making this difficult. Sign the papers or we'll have to pursue involuntary conservatorship. That means a court hearing, where everyone will hear about your mental decline. Is that what you want? Public humiliation? I looked into my daughter's eyes that once held only love for me and saw nothing but cold determination. What had happened to my child? Had money always corrupted her heart? Or was this a recent transformation? I'll sign, I said quietly, reaching for the pen. Victoria relaxed visibly, nodding at Parker. I scrawled my signature, making it deliberately messy and inconsistent with my normal handwriting. A small act of rebellion, but also part of the plan. Excellent, Parker said, gathering the documents. I'll file these immediately. After he left, Victoria was almost giddy with triumph. That wasn't so hard, was it? Now we can make sure you're properly taken care of. The way she said taken care of sent chills down my spine. That night, after Victoria and Robert had gone to bed, I retrieved my hidden phone from the Bible and made the call I'd been waiting to make. A call that would set everything in motion. Howard, I whispered into the phone. It's time. They made me sign the papers today. Are you safe, Eleanor? Howard's concern was palpable. For now, I replied, but I don't think I have much time. Victoria mentioned moving me to a facility as soon as the paperwork clears. Understood. I'll activate the Lazarus Protocol immediately. Can you hold out for 48 hours? The Lazarus Protocol was our code name for the plan we had established, a legal counter-strike. That would catch Victoria completely off guard. I think so, I whispered. But hurry, the next morning, Victoria announced she was going shopping for some things you'll need at the care center. Care center? I asked. What care center? Sunny Pines Assisted Living, she said casually. It's very nice, Mom. I've already put down a deposit for their memory care unit. So that was the plan, sign over control of my assets. Then warehoused me in a facility where I'd have no say in my affairs. The timeline was accelerating. When would I be going? I asked, fighting to keep my voice steady. We have an assessment scheduled for tomorrow, Victoria replied. If all goes well, you could move in this weekend. This weekend? I had less than 3 days left in my own home if Victoria had her way. That's very soon, I said carefully. What about my things? My house? Victoria patted my hand. Don't worry about the house. Robert and I will take care of everything, I bet you will. I thought. While Victoria was out, Robert remained as my watchdog, less calculating than my daughter. He inadvertently revealed more of their scheme. Victoria's under a lot of pressure with the kids' college coming up, he mentioned as we watched television. Your properties will really help secure their future. My properties? I asked innocently. But those are for my retirement. Robert backpedaled quickly. I just meant whatever you've planned to leave them eventually. Victoria's only thinking about your best interests. Another lie. I'd seen the spreadsheets on Victoria's laptop, calculating how quickly they could liquidate my assets. That afternoon, while Robert was distracted by a work call, I pressed the medical alert button in my pocket. When the operator answered, I whispered a single sentence, "Tell Howard Goldstein to execute Lazarus now." If you're as outraged by this betrayal as I was, like this video and follow now for the final part of my story, how I outmaneuvered my daughters scheme in the dramatic courtroom confrontation that changed everything. Because sometimes the people who think they're the cleverest severely underestimate a lifetime of survival skills. The morning after I activated the Lazarus protocol dawned with deceptive normalcy. Victoria prepared breakfast, checking items off her mental list as she arranged for my institutionalization. Robert made business calls, occasionally lowering his voice when discussing the properties. They had no idea what was coming. At precisely 10:17 a.m., the doorbell rang. Victoria frowned. She wasn't expecting visitors who might complicate her narrative about my supposed mental decline. Stay here, Mom, she instructed. As if I were a child. I'll see who it is. I heard muffled voices at the front door. Then Victoria's tone rising in alarm. You can't just barge in here. This is private property. Heavy footsteps approached the kitchen where I sat. Victoria rushed back in, her face flushed with anger, followed by Howard Goldstein, a court officer, and two police officers. Mrs. Richmond, one officer said, we're responding to a welfare check request from your attorney, who has expressed concern that you may be being held against your will. Victoria's composure fractured momentarily before she recovered. That's ridiculous. My mother has early onset dementia. We're taking care of her. Howard stepped forward, his 72-year-old frame still imposing after for decades of litigation. Your mother has been my client for 30 years, Ms. Richmond. She has no such diagnosis from any reputable physician. She was evaluated by Dr. Peterson. Victoria insisted. He confirmed her condition. Interesting, Howard replied, unfolding a document. Because I have here an affidavit from Dr. Marcus Brennan, chief of neurology at Memorial Hospital, who examined Mrs. Richmond just 2 weeks ago and found her completely competent. The color drained from Victoria's face. She hadn't known about that appointment one I'd arranged secretly during my supposed visit to Margaret. Officers, Howard continued, I have reason to believe Mrs. Richmond's signature on recent legal documents was obtained under duress. Additionally, there appears to be a coordinated effort to establish fraudulent medical records. These are serious accusations, one officer said. Mrs. Richmond, can you tell us if you're being kept here against your will? Yes, I said clearly. My daughter changed the locks on my home and has been preventing me from contacting anyone. She's fabricated medical conditions to try to gain control of my estate. Victoria's face contorted with rage and desperation. She's confused. She doesn't know what she's saying. I think we need to continue this discussion at the station, the officer stated. Mrs. Richmond, would you be willing to make a formal statement? Absolutely, I replied, standing up. And I have evidence. What evidence? Victoria demanded, her voice rising to a shrill pitch. I tapped my hearing aid. This device records conversations. I have weeks of recordings of you and Robert discussing your plans to have me declared incompetent, liquidate my assets, and place me in a facility. Robert, who had been silent until now, paled visibly. Victoria. What is she talking about? Victoria ignored him, her facade crumbling as she realized her carefully constructed plan was collapsing. You don't understand, she hissed at me. After everything I've done for you, everything I've sacrificed, I deserve that money. I'm entitled to it. Her outburst hung in the stunned silence that followed, damning in its naked greed. Ms. Richmond, one officer said quietly, I think you should consult an attorney of your own. Soon? What followed was a whirlwind of activity. I was escorted from my home not to an assisted living facility, but to Howard's office where I provided a detailed statement. The recordings from my hearing aid were transferred to secure storage. As evidence, I stayed with Margaret for 3 days while the locks on my house were changed yet again, this time to keep Victoria out. The legal proceedings that followed revealed the full extent of Victoria's scheme. She and Robert were deeply in debt despite their appearances of success. Bad investments, excessive spending, and a gambling habit Robert had concealed had left them financially desperate. My estate had become their solution if they could just access it a few decades earlier. Then nature intended. The falsified medical records were traced back to Dr. Peterson, who wasn't even a geriatric specialist but a former classmate of Victoria's who had agreed to help her in exchange for a percentage of my estate. He now faced charges of his own and the likely loss of his medical license. But the most powerful moment came 6 weeks later, in a wood-paneled courtroom where Victoria had filed an emergency petition trying to salvage her plan. She claimed I had become paranoid and delusional, fabricating conspiracy theories about my loving daughter due to advancing dementia. Her attorney presented the power of attorney I had signed under duress, along with Peterson's fraudulent evaluation. Victoria took the stand, tears streaming down her face as she described her heartbreaking decision to seek conservatorship for my mother's own protection. It was an Academy Award-worthy performance. Then Howard revealed our masterstroke, the true Lazarus Protocol. Your Honor, 6 months ago, Mrs. Richmond came to me with concerns that her daughter might attempt to seize control of her estate through false claims of incompetence, Howard explained. As a precaution, we took extraordinary steps to protect her autonomy. He presented the court with a video recording me, 6 months earlier, lucid and composed, detailing my concerns, and submitting to cognitive testing by 3 independent specialists, all of whom confirmed my complete competence. Furthermore, Howard continued, Mrs. Richmond executed a new will and estate plan with some very specific provisions. The courtroom fell silent as Howard handed the document to the judge. This will, properly executed and witnessed, includes what Mrs. Richmond calls her betrayal clause. It stipulates that any attempt by an heir to have her declared incompetent, or to seize control of her estate prior to her death, would result in immediate disinheritance. Victoria gasped audibly from her seat. Mrs. Richmond amended her will to leave the entirety of her estate to the Elder Justice Foundation, with a specific directive that it be used to help elderly victims of financial exploitation by family members, should any of her children attempt to seize control of her assets during her lifetime. The judge studied the document carefully, then looked directly at Victoria. Ms. Richmond, are you aware that what you're being accused of creating fraudulent medical documents and forcibly confining your mother are criminal offenses? Victoria's tears dried instantly. Your Honor, I was only trying to protect yourself, not your mother, the judge interrupted. This petition is denied. Moreover, I am referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for criminal investigation. He turned to me with genuine concern. Mrs. Richmond, I am deeply sorry for what you've endured. Rest assured, this court recognizes your competence and your right to manage your own affairs. The gavel fell with finality, echoing through the courtroom like the closing of a chapter. Outside the courthouse, Victoria attempted one last manipulation. Mom, she pleaded, grabbing my arm as I walked to Howard's car. You can't do this to me, to your grandchildren. They need their inheritance. I looked at my daughter, the stranger wearing the face of the child I had raised, and felt an overwhelming sadness. Victoria, I provided you with every advantage, the best education, a debt-free start to adulthood, connections to build your career. I would have shared my estate with you and the children willingly. All you had to do was wait until I actually died, but that could be decades. She blurted out, then immediately realized her mistake. Exactly, I replied quietly. That's the point. I walked away, leaving her standing on the courthouse steps, finally facing the consequences of her actions. The aftermath was both painful and healing. Robert filed for divorce, horrified by the extent of Victoria's deception once it was fully exposed. My grandchildren, old enough to understand some of what had happened, were kept away from me briefly, then gradually reintroduced through supervised visits to ensure Victoria wasn't using them as pawns in her vendetta. Criminal charges were eventually filed against Victoria and Dr. Peterson. Victoria accepted a plea deal: 18 months in prison for elder abuse, false imprisonment, and attempted fraud, followed by 5 years of probation and mandatory psychiatric treatment. As for me, I made changes to protect myself from future attempts. I sold the large family home and moved to a secure apartment in a vibrant senior community, where I've made genuine friends. I established a transparent trust for my grandchildren's education that Victoria cannot access, and I continued my relationship with the Elder Justice Foundation, becoming an advocate for other seniors facing exploitation from family members. Sometimes people ask if I miss my daughter, or regret my actions. The truth is complicated. I miss who I thought she was. I agree the relationship will never have again. But I do not regret protecting myself after a lifetime of hard work and sacrifice. I deserved better than to be discarded by my own child once she decided my wealth was more valuable than my presence in her life. The most important lesson I learned through this ordeal is that age doesn't diminish our right to dignity and autonomy. That sometimes the strongest thing we can do is refuse to be victimized, even when the predator shares our DNA. Last month, I received a letter from Victoria, now 6 months into her sentence. I don't expect forgiveness, she wrote, but I am getting help to understand why I did what I did. Someday, I hope you'll let me try to make amends. I haven't decided if reconciliation is possible. Trust, once shattered so completely, is nearly impossible to rebuild. But I have discovered something powerful in the aftermath of betrayal. Resilience doesn't diminish. With age, if anything, it grows stronger. My new will still includes the betrayal clause, but it also includes a pathway to redemption, a chance for Victoria to demonstrate, over time and through verifiable actions, that she has truly changed, not for the money, but for the restoration of our relationship. Because while justice was necessary and consequences appropriate, I haven't completely given up hope that somewhere inside the daughter who betrayed me is still the child I raised with love. If this story moved you, please like, follow, and share it with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late to stand up for yourself, even against family. Comment below if you've ever had to establish boundaries with loved ones, and remember that protecting yourself isn't selfish. Sometimes it's the only way to survive. Because the judge may have read my version of the will, but the most important verdict was the one I delivered myself. I deserve dignity, respect, and the right to control my own destiny, no matter my age.